or I'm not following proper procedure, give me a shout out. So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if you could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Irene, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Bagby.
Present.
Councilmember Brigham.
Here.
Councilmember Cruz.
Here.
Vice Mayor Turner.
Here.
And Mayor Walter.
Here.
Thank you.
Conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare this evening? Okay, hearing no one, we'll move on to agenda review. Any changes to the agenda?
Mayor, members of council, no changes to the agenda this evening.
Okay. Then let's move to public comment. Any member of the public may address the city council on matters that do not appear on tonight's agenda. Anyone wishing to do so, raise your hand and our city clerk will let you in. Irene, do we have anyone?
No public comment, Mayor.
Okay. And I guess just to be a little flexible, as this is kind of new to everyone, if somebody does want to make a public comment later, I'd be more than happy to listen to them. So if you would just let us know, Irene, if that's happening, okay?
Absolutely.
All right. The first item is proclamations and presentations, and a proclamation honoring and celebrating the 100th birthday of Ann Gillis. And David, do you have that proclamation to share with us?
Mayor, members of council, with great honor, I'd like to read the proclamation. The proclamation honors and celebrates the 100th birthday of Miss Ann Gillis. Whereas Anne Marie Amaroli was born on September 8, 1920, in the Tuscany mineral spa town of Porretta Terme. And whereas Anne immigrated with her Amaroli family to the United States from Italy when she was 11 months old. And whereas Anne's family experienced difficult times in the United States, living in a tent for a time, and in 1923, after moving around Mendocino and northern Sonoma County, the Amaroli family purchased a farm on Dutcher Creek Road. The family grew to include two younger brothers for Anne Marie. And whereas Anne loved music from an early age, demonstrating talent for the viola and mandolin to her Geyserville music teacher, and whereas undeterred that she would not get help from her family for tuition, Anne attended UC Berkeley at the age of 17 at a time when most women did not seek a college degree, and she completed her BA degree in 1942. And whereas dancing topped the list of social activities for the hardworking young professional woman with boundless energy, and was introduced to a tall, handsome, blue-eyed young man who introduced himself as Al Gillis at a dance. There was a mutual spark between them, and she engaged and later married Al in 1945, a diesel machinist, in the Navy. And whereas the new Miss Gillis held a number of jobs, including a civil service position at the Apprenticeship Standards Office, and was promoted to the highest position available for women at the time, a senior stenographer. And whereas Anne served in various arts groups and organizations, including a decade as Cloverdale's representative to the Sonoma County Arts Council, and one of her important local volunteer efforts involved staging elaborate fundraising dinners alongside other civic-minded friends to help build the senior center, where she remains active today. And now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Cloverdale deems it an honor to extend a proclamation to Miss Ann Gillis on the occasion of her 100th birthday with sincere congratulations and best wishes for many happy and productive years, dated September 9th, 2020. So ordered, Mayor Walter.
Well, thank you, David. And just on an FYI, I delivered the signed proclamation to the senior center. Melanie Hall, in turn, delivered it to Anne on Tuesday the 8th. I believe that was her birthday. So the proclamation has been delivered, and wow, 100 years. It's she's seen a lot in her life. So let's hope we can all make it to 100. I'd like to open it up to the public and council members if anyone would like to make any comments about the proclamation.
I would.
Mary Ann, please.
Yeah. I don't know if any of the rest of you had the pleasure, but I have, I was invited to her house to have a gnocchi dinner, and she makes some of the best I've ever had in my life. Plus, she was really fun. So, bless you, Anne, and happy 100th.
Okay, Councilmember Bagby.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank her for all of her contributions. You know, we as a community, we owe a really deep debt to Anne. Not only has she been, she's still involved with the senior center, you know, and was a longtime volunteer, but I know that she donated, you know, 100% of the revenue from her artwork for many years to support the senior center, and gave those like lavish, legendary dinners on a regular basis and for many years. And we, you know, those fundraisers and that foundation is what has enabled the senior center to be, you know, an anchor in our community. And as it still is today, serving seniors and the underserved. So, you know, the entire community really owes a debt to her for all the work and contributions that she's made to the senior center, and also her, you know, example of service. She's also, in addition to being a legendary cook, she's also a legendary hugger, and her kindness is legendary as well. So we wish really thank her and wish her a happy birthday this week.
Thank you. Councilmember Cruz.
Yes, I've only known her for 4 years, and this has been the warmest 4 years with Anne. I met her through her work at the History Center, and I really enjoyed every minute, and definitely every hug that I received from her and every laughter. One time I was not paying too much attention. She decided to go ahead and just hug Mark and talk to him. She's quite resourceful too. Happy birthday, Anne.
Thank you, Councilmember Cruz. And Irene, I see we have Melanie Hall raising her hand to say a few words. If you could let her in.
Yes. Ms. Hall, you should be unmuted there.
Well, I just have to do a little follow-up. I just want to thank the council for doing this proclamation for Anne. She did come by the senior center yesterday with her daughter. Mark Randy, who actually approached the city council for this proclamation, was there as well. We got to wish her a happy birthday. There was much love all around us with Ann Gillis. I think the best part of it is that we know we're going to have a party later, and she's going to get to hug everybody. So she was thrilled and sends her love to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Anyone else wishing to make a comment?
No other hands are, oh, excuse me. Yes, one more, Mr. Bob Cox.
Bob, you're unmuted. You have to unmute yourself, Bob.
He might be frozen.
Okay.
I will ask him to unmute, see if that helps.
Yeah.
I should say frozen in Colorado, not in California.
Ah,
Well, Irene, let's do this. Let's move on to the next
of course.
proclamation, because I'm sure that Bob is going to want to say something about this, so he can kill two birds with one stone. And this is a proclamation celebrating the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. and longtime Cloverdalian residents who served during World War II. And David, were you also going to do the honors on this one, please?
Mayor, again, delighted to have the honor of reading this proclamation. This is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cloverdale commemorating the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II and the longtime Cloverdale residents who served our country during the World War II. Whereas September 2nd, 2020 marks the 75th commemoration of the end of World War II. And whereas commemoration of the end of World War II is important to educate the public about the history of the World War II and highlight the service of the armed forces during World War II and the contribution of federal agencies and governmental and non-governmental organizations that served with or in support of the armed forces. And whereas the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II is an important milestone to pay tribute to the contribution made on the home front by the people of the United States during World War II, recognize the contributions and sacrifices made by our allies, and remember the Holocaust. And whereas the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II enables us to reflect and celebrate the peace that was gained as we honor all the men and women who have answered the call of duty and embraced the sacrifice of those who served in World War II. And whereas the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II represents an opportunity to thank and honor veterans of World War II, including personnel who were held as prisoners of war or listed as missing in action, for their service and sacrifice on behalf of the United States, and to thank and honor the family of these veterans. And whereas in Cloverdale, we have 3 remaining veterans of that war still living, and a 4th who recently passed on May 14th of this year, the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, honor for their service. Those include Harold Peters, a U.S. Army and a lifelong resident, was awarded Bronze Star as well as a Silver Star. Harold Myers, who served with U.S. Navy, a longtime Cloverdale resident. He served as a second-class signalman in the Navy in the Hawaiian Islands and South Pacific. In addition, Frank Rose, who served in the U.S. Army as a long-term Cloverdale resident of over 80 years. He was a V-5 aviation cadet. And last but not least, Leonard Middlestat, who served in the U.S. Army, was a Cloverdale resident for 75 years and served in the Battle of the Bulge and was awarded a Bronze Star as well as a Purple Heart. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Cloverdale does hereby commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II in honor of the heroic City of Cloverdale veterans that served our great country. Dated this day, September 9th, 2020, signed and ordered by Mayor Walter.
Well, thank you, David. And I know a few of the gentlemen that served in World War II, especially Frank Rose. I always enjoy talking to Frank. You got to be careful he doesn't run you over with that motor scooter that he has. But Mr. Cox, I'm going to call on you if you'd like to say a few words about this and about the proclamation we did for Ann Gillis as well. So
well,
Bob, if you're with us.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right, good enough. I'll put Jeannie on for Ann, and then I'll come on for the veterans.
Okay, just a brief word about Ann. I met her. She actually approached me during an event downtown when we first moved to Cloverdale and kept wanting me to come to the Fun Girl lunches that started in town in the 60s. Well, luckily I finally retired and I've been going to those lunches with Ann ever since. And the ladies that attend go back in Cloverdale history. And I just appreciate Ann for always making sure that everyone around her has a smile on their face while she has that twinkle in her eye.
All right.
Thank you, Jeannie.
All right. I want to thank the city for getting this proclamation for the veterans here on this week's agenda. As you know, last week was the 75th anniversary. Now, these 4 veterans, all 4, were in the Citrus Fair parade this year. So it was an honor for them to all do that, and it was something that that our city of Cloverdale can be very proud of these 4 gentlemen. So again, thank you very much for getting it on the agenda tonight. And on Veterans Day, Gus, the mayor, will present these gentlemen with their certificates of honor at that time. So thank you, Gus, for doing that. Thank you, David, for getting it done. Appreciated all you've done for the vets.
Well, thank you, Bob, for bringing this forward. Council members, any remarks or anything to say on this? Well, I'm just going to take a minute, if I could. My dad, or I should say my stepdad, was a 32-year veteran of the Navy. And he was at Pearl Harbor when it was attacked. As a matter of fact, he was one of the sailors on the parade grounds attending Mass on Sunday morning. And he was wounded there. When he was better, of course, he went back on the submarines and spent 32 years with the submarine. So, you know, it was really a challenge to have a 32-year military man as a father. And as soon as I turned 18, I left home and joined the Navy. And then later, he and I hooked up in Hawaii. I was with the Marine Corps at the time, and he was still on the submarines. And then after he passed away in '92, I was flipping through his military records that I retrieved. And he and I were actually in Vietnam at the same time. I was up on the demilitarized zone with the 3rd Marine Division, and he was down in the Saigon area and in the riverboats. He was one of those PT captains that had like I forget what you call them, a PT boat. So I go back a long way with the military, and those 4 men should be congratulated for their service to the country. So, okay, if there's nothing else, and thank you for indulging me rambling there. Appreciate that. Next, we have a presentation by Healdsburg District Hospital on the purchase agreement of the Healdsburg District Hospital. And David, is this your item or?
Well, Mayor, I'm going to just introduce our speaker tonight and give you a brief introduction, and then I'll turn it over to our speaker. The item tonight is a presentation by Miss Erin Gore. She's the board chair for the Northern Sonoma County Healdsburg District Hospital. The Healdsburg District Hospital, of course, located in Healdsburg, was founded in 1905, and it's now operated by the North Sonoma County Healthcare District. This district was formed in 2001 and began operating the hospital in 2002. Most recently, the North Sonoma County District Board adopted a resolution on July 30th, recommending that the district voters weigh in on the sale of the hospital and its clinics to a secular affiliate of Providence St. Joseph's Health. And what Erin's going to present, Ms. Erin Gore is going to present an overview of the proposed purchase agreement for Healdsburg District Hospital. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our city clerk, Irene, to facilitate the presentation by Ms. Gore. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. Let's see. Can y'all hear me okay?
Fine, Erin, thank you.
Okay, great. Nice to see you all. We had to draw straws for who was going to present to each city council, and I was like, I have to do Cloverdale. Like, you can have Healdsburg, I have to do Cloverdale. So it's nice to be here today for all of you. I'm the chair of the board of the hospital this year. I know a lot of you guys know me from my cannabis business, but in addition, my volunteer passion is around health access and creating equality across healthcare. And so I've been on the district board since 2016. I was elected like you all were for the council. We're a full Brown Act board, and we represent the entire District 4, so Supervisor Gore's district. So it's Windsor all the way up through Cloverdale and then all the rural areas in between. So as chair of the board this year, one of my passions was to get a transaction for a long-term solution for the hospital. And I'm really incredibly proud of how far we've come as a board and as an organization and what we're going to present to you tonight. So with that, Irene, go ahead and flip it through. The presentation is pretty long, so I'm just going to highlight key points into it. What I really would love this session to be is opportunity for you all to ask questions of me as the board representative. I was also on the negotiation committee and the partnership committee as well. So I really want this to be an open dialogue. I'm going to pop through a few highlights. You have this full presentation in your board packet. In addition, you have our FAQs, which is our frequently asked questions, as well as we've run 3 community meetings. And so we compiled all the questions from those community meetings into that other document that I've included in the presentation. So you can see what the community thinks, you can see any challenges, you can see what the FAQs are. I just really want this to be transparent and to provide as much information as possible. So this was our community meeting presenters. We have a really wonderful and powerful crosshatch of community members, physicians, as well as C-suite and board volunteers involved in this organization and as well as involved in this proposed partnership. This is going to the district voters at the November election. I am here today as a volunteer to the campaign. I am not here today as a board member for the organization. But I'm here representing the Measure BB, it's called, and asking for your support of Measure BB. So here's some of our board members and doctors. They're in our community, and they've all been involved in the presentation and evolution of this partnership. Keep going, Irene, please. The history of the hospital is pretty interesting. I liked listening to the proclamations because some of it parallels. The hospital was actually established in 1905 and then in 1968 moved to its new location and really reestablished and bought by new owners. In 1998, that's really when the evolution of healthcare started and the hospital became in distress. A lot of you all have probably been around for the Save Our Hospital campaigns over the years. Irene, if you want to go to the next slide, please. In 2000, it happened with Save Our Hospital. In 2004, it happened with Save Our Hospital. In 2007. And again, we're at the point today where we have never been stronger, actually financially as an organization, for how we're operating our run rates, our physician community, our patient community. We're really proud that we are an emergency department here in the North Sonoma County. We're a stroke institute with UCSF. We have a lot of incredible technology and services that we offer, but due to the Kincaid fire, the rising cost of healthcare, a lot of the pandemic, the situations we're in, it's made running an independent standalone hospital incredibly challenging, and the future looks really dark if we don't do something significant to stabilize. Next slide, please. Again, I talked about this. Our district is Windsor through Cloverdale. We're a 5-district board. We're elected by the voters. We are funded by a parcel tax. So you all, if you're homeowners, recognize that there's a $150 parcel tax. This was voted in by the voters twice, actually. We passed the tax measure. And so this is funded right now, which services our debt and really funds our operations. We currently serve 10,000 patients a year. And we do have affiliations, like I said, with San Francisco, with the UC system, and with Santa Rosa Memorial. Next slide. And I've gone through this so many times, so if I go fast, just be like, yo. Like I kind of touched on and you saw, over the last 20 years, we've really struggled. It's very, very difficult in healthcare to be a standalone rural community hospital. We have changing laws that we have to abide by, but they really impact us. We have unfunded government mandates. We have rises in natural disasters. We've been shut down twice now. And then on top of now, we have a global pandemic that we've been forced to fund. We have an exponential rate of innovation and technology change that really is expensive but instrumental and super important to providing that quality care. And then all of that leads into squeezed payer contracts and negative profit margins. I read a quote in Forbes that said 1 in 4 rural hospitals are at the risk of closing. It's just like any other industry where everything is looking to centralize and to scale, and really partnership is what it's about. When we as the board saw this, we saw this starting and it's only accelerated. We knew we had to come up with something. We really first took a step at what does this mean to us? What is the cost of all 6 of these pillars? What does that really impact us? And then how do we move through it? So next slide. This is our long-term outlook. This is our challenges. When I said we took those 6 topics and we really broke it down, what does this mean for us? We are losing 5 to 10 million in reduced payer contracts. We have a debt service of 10 million that we inherited that we have to continue to service the bonds. We are looking at a required 10 to 20 million of capital projects and equipment that we need to purchase to be able to provide care. We have a required $15 to $25 million new IT system we need to install that we will be required to be able to get the Medicare paybacks and Medicaid paybacks. And then most importantly, and the largest looming thing, is we have a $20 to $50 million seismic project that we have to complete on the hospital by 2030, mandated by the government. So basically, as a district, we're looking to come up with $60 to $115 million in the next 10 years. Well, you guys are a rural community. You understand what type of capital challenge this would mean to the organization. We really took a step back and said, oh, like, first of all, holy shit. And then second of all, okay, how are we gonna do this? On top of this, this doesn't even take into impact the effects of evacuating for the Kincaid fire, shutting down for COVID, the increase of PPE, the layoffs, the furloughs, the reduced payers, the reduced surgeries, all of the dramatic impact that the last year has had on the financial viability of the organization. So you can see that while we're doing really great and arguably the best we've ever done, the future is really unstable. Next slide. So this is what we decided to do as a board. We really felt like there was 4 options to a solution. The first one, we could just straight up close the hospital. The second one was we could look for a long-term partner. The third one was we could look to build a new hospital and try to do some of those more efficiently and combine them into something else. Maybe the land was worth enough value that we could sell the land and parlay it into something else. And then the fourth one was we could stay independent. And what we realized is that we really only had one solution after running all 4 of these models. We created, and that was the long-term partner. We created a strategic planning committee. We created a partnership committee. These 2 committees worked simultaneously in parallel on all 4 of these to evaluate what the best option would be. And then they really worked together and advised each other. Strategic planning was made of board members, community members, volunteers, physicians, C-suite. The partnership committee was more tactical, and it was comprised of board members, attorneys, and M&A specialists. So we really tried to look at who are the stakeholders for each group, different skill sets, diverse community members, diverse makeup of the organization, and tackle these problems. So next slide. It became very obvious and very evident the long-term partner was the only viable path. We knew from community surveys we didn't want to close the hospital. It was critical for care, especially for our disadvantaged populations. It was the first stop for many of our Medicaid patients. It was the only Medicare provider in the area, and it was really the first line of defense for any emergency crisis, especially in the North County. And so for that, we knew for sure no matter what, we had to figure out how to keep the hospital open and how to get access to this type of capital that we needed. So once we realized that, we said, okay, now where do we go from here? We completed a community needs assessment, surveys, landscaping. We really tried to do our discipline diligence to create a foundation of how to pick a good partner. The second thing we did is we looked at all sorts of different partners. So we said, okay, these are the requirements. Now we're going to evaluate UCSF, Adventist, joining with other rural hospitals, Sutter, Kaiser, Providence, St. Joe's, Petaluma, you name it, we talked to them. And what became very clear was that once we knew what our criteria was across the bottom there, and once we knew the capital we were looking at, we were able to cross that list off very quickly. Next slide. Baby, I need you to go, Tom. I need you to go to Dada. Sorry, guys, my little guy's here. Go get Dada. Go get Dada. Hold on 1 second. You think my husband could like watch my son for 15 minutes? No, there's a fantasy football draft. Sorry, everyone. Anyway, okay, so it became very, very obvious through this process. Providence St. Joseph's Health was the best solution. They were a local provider. They had really incredible quality of care. They understood our community and they had access to the capital we needed. So we started, one thing that's really interesting, we've actually been in a relationship with Providence St. Joseph's Health since 2010. In 2016, we signed the initial MOU to explore what the partnership could look like in a very short term. We were looking for short-term capital. In 2018, we changed that to be a long-term lease. And then at the culmination of all of that strategic planning work and that landscaping work and looking at all the partners, we really got to an end solution that we felt was incredible for the local community and the district. And they came to the table as a really engaged partner who wanted to get it there together. And so in 2020, we just voted on as a board the agreement that we would sell the district assets to Providence St. Joseph's Health. So it's been an incredible process to get there. What I want to do is I want to go through the terms of the deal and then what that looks like for Cloverdale and for the district, and then open it up to questions. So next slide. The interesting thing, you think Providence St. Joseph's Health, Catholic entity, red flag. Well, I'm really proud to say that actually we found a solution that is to a secular arm of Providence St. Joseph's Health. It's called NorCal Health Connect, LLC. What that means is that it's a non-Catholic entity within the organization. The reason this is important is because the ethical religious directives are not involved then. So your concern around women's rights and women's rights to healthcare and proper maternal care and proper end-of-life care are all addressed because we're not talking about the ethical religious directives. NorCal Health Connect has its own governing board. There will be a community board that is going to be formed to manage the organization. This will be 2/3 comprised of local representation as well as district members, as well as members of the NorCal Health Connect organization. And then the district will remain because we still have to manage the parcel tax, service the debt, and really act as a fiduciary to the new transaction and make sure that the entities are operating in line with our agreement and in best interest of the community. This is all tentative. So all the agreements have been finalized and made, definitive documents have been drafted. Now we need to go into the vote and we need this codified by the voters for the transaction to be finalized. It'll be completed at December 31st, 2020, after the election. So next slide, please. What's amazing about this agreement and the way we structured it, it guarantees that the hospital and all of our services will be here as a critical access hospital with an emergency room for the next 30 years. So again, you saw that huge capital requirement we had in the next 10 years. You saw all the risk involved in these rural hospitals closing. This agreement is written in a way that it guarantees that the hospital and the services will exist for the next 30 years. It also maintains no increase in taxes. It also maintains our community benefit and our charity care, which is really important to us as board members. We have written into the agreement an ability to retain all the employees. And then it allows all the capital investments to happen to really elevate and continue the quality of care and keep up with the government mandates and the rate of innovation and all the things happening in healthcare today. And then most importantly, I think, is that it expands care and has oversight. So really that local representation was really, a lot of effort was put into how do we ensure that they hold up their end of the deal? What happens if we need to part ways? What happens if they're not doing it? How do we unwind this? Well, NorCal Health Connect has a fiduciary responsibility to make the hospital stand alone again if we ever had to unwind the relationship because they're breaking their side of the agreement. So really, we put our time to think through every worst case scenario. I guess you could say, having learned from a lot of difficult scenarios lately, to put a robust agreement in place that was really beneficial for everyone. Next slide. These are the services we currently offer and that we will go back to continuing to offer. I know some of this has slightly changed in the land of COVID because of our financial capacity and ability to maintain services. So the good news is we're basing this entire agreement on our services pre-COVID. So like Cloverdale physical therapy was closed and the Cloverdale clinic was impacted. Well, those services are coming back with this agreement. And what we expect to be even expanded upon, specifically in primary care. So we're really excited for that, for the town and especially then also for all the emergency resources. Next slide. What's awesome and most important is we have support of our staff and our physicians. So our staff is excited. They see this as mobility. They see this as stability. They think this is going to be really great for providing care. The staff really does like Santa Rosa Memorial. So they think this is wonderful. And the physicians see this really as an ability to continue to elevate their practice and to have more resources in a larger network of physicians than they have today. So having Dr. Lakander, he's our chief of staff. He runs the medical executive committee. Having Dr. Tito, he's our chief of surgery. Having these two guys work with me relentlessly over the last year and really championing this out to our community has been incredibly powerful and really is a testament to how good of a relationship this is going to be for our community. And then next slide. Again, the election's the 3rd. It must have a majority of votes of 51%. It's out of District 4, and then the transaction is set to close by the 31st. And I think that's it. Any other slides, Irene? Yeah, so questions. I want you guys to, ask away, feel comfortable. No questions too easy or too hard. I've kind of heard it all at this point, so.
Thank you, Aaron. I think what I'll do is I'll bring it for the city council. If you have any questions, then we'll open it to the public and then we'll bring it back to the council.
Okay, great.
Council members, questions for Aaron?
I have a comment.
Great.
Hi, Aaron. It's Mary Ann Brigham. First off, I want to thank you. I've watched this whole process for the last few years, and you and your group have worked their butts off for this. And it's a solution that I think we were all kind of hoping for. So good job. I got to say that. You actually, the presentation itself answered almost every one of my questions that I had jotted down. And I am happy to hear that services for women will not be affected. And that was very forward thinking of you guys. And I just want to say thank you. I'm hopeful.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. And I know if anyone can understand the work that goes into being an elected board and a Brown Act board for a rural healthcare district, it's a city council member.
Boy, howdy.
So I appreciate you for saying that. And I am, to my core, like we all have our own political beliefs. So it was something that we had to stand behind. And especially myself as, I would say a younger board member on the district board, I was looking at this for healthcare for generations to come and how do we ensure that healthcare is there and how do I ensure my family has a place to go? And so that was really, really important to us, was to have women's rights at the table, deal stopper, and we were able to come up with a really creative solution to make it happen.
Yes, you did.
This is the same organization that Petaluma Hospital is going to a voter initiative to actually sell to as well. So they're looking to acquire Healdsburg as well as Petaluma and create a real kind of Sonoma County center of excellence within that reach.
Thank you.
Council members?
Melanie.
Please, Melanie.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you really did address a lot of my concerns in the presentation. Thank you so much for being very thorough and not leaving anything or taking anything for granted. And I am very gratified to see your concern and how you've carried out what would have been my concern regarding some of the religious ethical questions. And so that's very satisfying. I'm just wondering on how did the strike at Memorial, affect some of the negotiations? I was wondering if you could speak to that and if you have any ongoing staffing concerns about that. And then I think you touched on it, but I'm wondering if you could also address, what are the financial considerations if the purchaser does have financial difficulties? Could you kind of go back and elaborate on that a little bit and what would happen?
Yeah, totally. So, okay, lots of questions. So let me unpack it. So first question is the staffing. So Memorial is unionized. Healdsburg is not. Interesting thing about how hospitals operate is there's layers of different sub-organizations. So there's physician provider organizations and staffing organizations, and there's lots of these layers of complexity. Yep. So what is really good and what the staff says is that they are not going to have to join the Memorial Union. They're not going to be on those terms. They're going to be held to the terms of their current employee agreements. So nothing is going to be changing for their employment, like their pay or their benefits or any of that. So the idea of the Memorials, going on strike and the nurses and that's a very different and separate thing. And that's also how Petaluma is going to be running. So they all run in these kind of isolated pods for some of those benefit HR employee type functions. As far as the financials of the transaction first, I don't think I touched on it. So let me just hit on that and then I'll talk on the financials of unpacking the transaction. So for the transaction, by government law, we have to have a third party valuation on the value of the assets of the entity, considering it's a publicly funded entity. So it's owned by the people. So we need to sell the value for fair market value, and we can't sell it for anything more or anything less. So we had a third party fiduciary company who does this professionally, like they value hospitals, value our district and all of our assets. So including, some people thought, oh, well, the land's worth $1 billion, sell the land because it's downtown Healdsburg. And you're like, well, no, not quite. So we had a formal valuation done. It came out to be at max 15 million for all of the assets and all the land and all in. Many of the facilities that we operate out of, we lease. So people think we own them, but they're owned by physicians who lease to the hospital or that kind of thing. So the fair market value came back at $15 million. The transaction is valued at $15 million. It's $5 million in cash up front. It's $10 million in capital investment in kind to the community, in addition to all that huge list of capital I put up there. So we feel we got a really incredible deal for that. In addition, the tax will continue to perpetuity, and the tax will be used to service the current district debt, as well as to fund the district as long as the hospital is being operated. So that's about like $200,000 a year. It's not very much money to fund the district, but that's the terms of the 30-year arrangement and how that will operate. If something were to go wrong, and if something were let's say Providence St. Joseph's Health becomes insoluble and they, get arrested and they break them up, or antitrust, or who knows what, right? The Providence St. Joseph's Health / NorCal Health Connect has to fund the district with $100 million to be able to go out and build its own hospital. And so if we look to how we have to make through seismic, it would be that kind of $100 million capital amount. So the Providence St. Joseph's Health would have to, by commensurating the transaction, give that financial money to the hospital and help the hospital become independent and standalone. There's also a whole unpacking the IT, because the IT is really complicated. And if it's a joint IT system with health medical records, and they pull the computer down and they type on it, and that's in the hospital system. So everywhere they go, they have those records. That's to replace, and that's really complicated. So we've got a plan to unpack that.
Great, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Council members, anyone else?
Marta has a question. She's on mute.
Marta?
Hi.
Hi, Marta.
Hi, Erin. Thank you for this presentation and for being present in your town. I have a question, and that is, St. Joseph's is known for its outreach to the Latino community and to nonprofits throughout the area. Is that going to be a different initiative from Healdsburg, or is it still going to be from Santa Rosa?
So I think a lot of that is to be determined. That's one thing we're incredibly excited about is their community benefit program and their population health management to the Latino communities. And it's something we absolutely are hoping to expand into the North District and even deeper and greater level. It's what the board's really passionate about. And that's what that 10 million of that second piece of the initial transaction is going towards. So I think it's to be determined if it's going to be run out of Healdsburg or St. Joseph's. My guess is some combination, all of the above. My guess is it's also developing a grant program to continue to fund a lot of the health access initiatives we know exist in the Latino population around getting to a clinic and having the right provider speak the right language with the right timing and all of the challenges that we see. So I would expect it only to evolve, that's the word I was looking for, to only grow and become stronger and more impactful up here.
Yeah, because I really like especially other programs that they have for the community at large, especially the coalition and collaboration with LandPads that encourages outside activities for healthier lifestyles.
Yep, exactly. And we know that we've connected them with Corazon. We know that we have brought in some other organizations. The other thing I should mention is that the Healthcare Foundation has endorsed the transaction and the Measure BB. And they also see this as a really great opportunity to have more community impact for health access. So how can we start to work better with, Alexander Valley Healthcare, with Alliance, with all those organizations that exist and are so critical and vital to our community, but also we're so severely impacted with COVID. So so that's great to have their support as well.
Thank you.
Well, Irene, are there any comments from the public? Any hands raised?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
The one thing I'll say to the public, if anybody's out there listening, we know we have a lot of employees who live in Cloverdale. It's a big voter block for us. They're extremely important. That's why I was like, I have to do Cloverdale. But for our employees, we just really appreciate their support and feel this is a really good transaction. I also want to be clear with the employees or with all of you, if the transaction doesn't happen, if the voters don't support it, whether because the ballot's so huge or everybody's not voting because they're protesting Donald Trump or whatever weird reason, is that the hospital will probably close. There's no way we can burden the community with $120 million capital raise. We can't get it in grants. We can't get it in loans. We don't qualify. There's no other partner out there that we feel is suitable enough to begin to try to put this together with. So this is really a do or die moment. And it's not because we're in such financial distress that we can't keep going. It's because we can't meet these unfunded government mandates of these huge capital requirements that are in our next 10-year horizon. So if this is really our swing at it, and if this doesn't work and the voters don't get behind it, then people will lose their job and we will lose health access here in the North County, which is going to be so devastating for so many.
Well, thank you, Aaron. And just a couple remarks that I had. First of all, I think it's imperative that we keep the doors open of healthcare in the Northern County. As I look at this, I'm scratching my head trying to figure out what's in it for St. Joseph's. What's their reward for doing this? It seems to be missing. Can you maybe share that?
Yes, sure. So St. Joseph's is really innovative in how they see population health and how they see the future of healthcare. They also need to compete against Sutter and Kaiser. Sutter is in our backyard, right? And Kaiser dominates Northern California. So if you look at St. Joseph's and you look at how are you going to scale your services and have economy of services, you need to have more patients and you need to have more insurance offerings, more solutions for employers to offer to their employees, all of that. So Healdsburg and Petaluma are really great opportunities for Providence St. Joseph's to really step up against the Kaiser and the Sutter of the world and to really offer and advance their innovative quality care. The other thing is that Healdsburg is a critical access hospital designation. We received that I think it's in the presentation somewhere, I don't remember, in the early 2000s, I think. What that means is we're cost reimbursed. So that means where another hospital system, Medicare, the government will say, oh, I'm going to only pay you 22% of whatever you charge me. Because we're a critical access hospital, meaning we're rural, we're a critical lifeline for people, where we're their first stop no matter what. That's Healdsburg. So it seems like we're not rural, but the truth is we really are. And so because of this designation, we're cost reimbursed, meaning if it costs us 68 cents on the dollar, unlike other organizations where they get paid 22 cents no matter what, we get paid 68 cents. So we have to submit cost reports. So the benefit for Providence St. Joseph's, in addition to strategic, in addition to competition, in addition to community benefit and community health management, is financial. That there is opportunity for them to get economy of scale and to scale their financials using our designation and our licenses. So it's really great for our employees, because if you have an accountant in Healdsburg and an accountant in somewhere else, the accountant in Healdsburg gets their full cost reimbursed in a capacity, right? So it's not as simple as that, but it gives you an idea of what the advantages are for Providence St. Joseph's. I would say beyond even financial, we know there's financial synergies and opportunities for them, but more than that, this is about how they can continue to grow their network, better do population health management, and better serve the communities they want to be in.
Thank you. And I guess if for some reason this doesn't pass in November, the parcel tax would remain until all the debt's paid that's been accumulated by Healdsburg?
The parcel tax remains into perpetuity.
Right.
So the parcel tax would remain no matter what. So if this fails, people are still going to pay the tax for services that don't exist. You know, It's like education, right? How many of you don't have kids? Like, so many people don't have kids, but you wouldn't say like, well, I'm not paying property tax for education because I have no children. That doesn't apply to me. It's, we understand it's a tax, it's $150 a year, but it provides such critical care for those who use it, whether it's a winery patient who has a heart attack out tasting, or your farm worker who it's their first line of defense for healthcare, or your senior who needs to go to the Medicare services and the geriatric specialists that we have. So we serve these very vulnerable populations that traditionally don't go to Kaiser, don't have Blue Cross Blue Shield and go to Sutter. That's who we serve. And that's where if this were to go away, people would still have to pay the tax. They still have to do that. And these populations wouldn't be served. And if it's their son who swallows a rubber band or breaks their thumb, they don't have the care that they need. Or God forbid, a heart attack or something more serious, right?
Well, I think you won't have a problem getting this passed at all. I mean, people recognize that we do need health care, especially Cloverdale being an island such as we are, and Healdsburg, in the outer areas, we need that. So I'm going to move on, but before we do, I'm just going to ask one more, and then Aaron, I'd like you to just share with us what would you like from the City Council today.
Okay, great. Melanie has a question quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up on something that Gus was referring to, and make sure that we let people know how much we appreciate the draw station and the physical therapy location here in Cloverdale. That's something a lot of folks use, and who either had orthopedic surgery at Healdsburg. You guys have a great orthopedic surgeon and orthopedic department, and instead of having to get in their car and drive to Healdsburg or Santa Rosa, they just go to physical therapy right here in Cloverdale. So for knee replacements, shoulder replacements, accidents, things like that, it's just it's a level of care that many of the other carriers or providers you don't have. You have to get in the car and go to Santa Rosa. So we really appreciate that, and of course we want to make sure that stays here. My doctor is associated with the Healdsburg Hospital, and I tell him I get to walk down the street in the morning, get my blood drawn, and then I go straight to the and get a donut. Because that just irks him to no end. So it's all very conveniently located, and it's unless you've had to get in the car and to get your medical care, or if you had to, watch somebody do that, you take it for granted that service, that's been here for years, and the community really appreciates it and really utilizes it. And that's the kind of thing that I think will get the word out to Cloverdale voters. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Melanie. And I expect those only to expand and to really offer more services. I mean, as an employer, you guys know I employ a lot of mostly Cloverdalians at Garden Society. And we, you know, when I was looking at offering healthcare, it was a real challenge to look at like, who do I do Kaiser? Do I do like, what kind of healthcare do I do? And then part of that discussion is like where your employees live and how far is it to their provider. And it was like, if I was going to offer Kaiser, it was a 45-minute drive to go to your doctor. And like, God forbid something goes wrong, right? So, you know, for me, it was really instrumental as a business owner in my decision-making process of who I have healthcare insurance with and provide to my employees so they have access to care close to home. The other thing, I had one other kind of thing. I forget what it was. Doesn't matter. Oh, I know what it was, Gus, to your point. A couple things. So you can find lots of information on our website. So you can actually find the term sheet and the details of the transaction there. You can find this full presentation as well as the taped community meetings there. You can find loads and loads and loads of information. So if anybody is interested in digging into the details or you get any pushback, I think that's a good place to send them. I'm happy to answer any questions as well, direct. If there's any community members who have concerns or this or that, you know, please send them my way or have them reach out to us over social media because we are actively managing on that as well. What I would love for the council, and I'm not exactly sure how this works, so maybe Mr. Kelly, you can provide feedback or council can provide, legal counsel can provide feedback, but we would love to have the council's endorsement of Measure BB. So whether that's, I can reach out to you individually to endorse or whether you collectively and unanimously want to endorse as a council. I think it's really powerful for the community to have the council behind this measure. We also have a list of volunteer things because this is a full campaign. The lucky part is Providence St. Joseph's is paying the campaign, so we don't need to solicit campaign donations, which makes it much nicer. However, we have signs going up, we have voter outreach, we have mail drops, because we really, really, really need this to pass, and it should pass because it is the right thing. So we are putting a full force of effort behind running a very well-oiled campaign to make sure that we get it over the finish line. So if any of you have any sign locations in Cloverdale or can help me with the Railroad Square Bar sign location or ideas, we're gonna be putting one up on the Ice House. That would be really helpful. And then we're doing Zoom meet and greets. So I'll be reaching out to some Cloverdale folks to host some of those. And anyway, I have a whole list of volunteer opportunity. The final one that might be interesting for you all is letter to the editors. So if you are willing to endorse as a council member and you're willing to do a letter to the editor to the paper, that would be extremely powerful and supportive for us. And we even have templated letters you're welcome to use.
Okay. Well, Aaron, thank you for the presentation. And we will find out, one second, Councilmember, because we will find out how we can endorse. I know I've received phone calls. I'm sure most of the council has received phone calls as well. And I was waiting until I saw this presentation, but personally, I will endorse it. And let's see what we can do from a city standpoint. Councilmember Cruz?
Yes, Aaron, you mentioned that this presentation is being made throughout the county. Who else has endorsed so far?
So we have a full list of endorsers on the website. Supervisor James Gore, Senator Mike McGuire, Assemblymember Jim Wood. We have the Healthcare Foundation, Corazon. We have, there's like a really long list. The Rotaries have all endorsed, Rotary Cloverdale, Kiwanis endorsed, AUW. So we're making progress. It's just as fast as we can have these meetings. We're presenting to Udall tonight. We're presenting to Windsor next week. We're presenting to Healdsburg the week after that for formal council meeting education sessions like this. So that's good. We have Mayor, is she the mayor of Windsor? Oh, I should know that. Sorry. We have Esther Loomis has endorsed and actually went on the ballot for us in Windsor. So we have a really good, I feel, representation, but we would love to be able to add you all for Cloverdale because you have such weight with the community and are so important to have your support. So just Gus, to your point, just let me know, or maybe David, you can follow up with me, or Kevin even, about endorsing if I should follow up individually with each council member, or if it can be as an organization, or what I need to do for that. And then I can take that offline.
Okay. Well, Aaron, we will be getting back to you, and we'll be getting some guidance from David and our city attorney to see how we can do that. So
perfect. I know I went over my allotted time, so thank you very much. It was a very excellent discussion, and I appreciate your passion and your support and your questions as well.
Council members, one last time, anything, staff? Members of the public? I see no hands. Okay. Well, Aaron, thank you again for the presentation, and let's keep our fingers crossed, okay?
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Aaron.
Okay, next item is a presentation by Healdsburg Consulting, LLC, on the water and sewer rate study update. And David, I think, let me just get to that real quick. I want to see who's handling that for city staff.
Mayor, I can proceed if that's okay with you.
Okay. All right, David, please.
Okay. This item is a presentation by Mark Hildebrand with Hildebrand Consulting. Mark was retained by the City Council to update the financial plan for the water and wastewater enterprises, and ultimately prepare an updated rate study for those enterprises. The council heard a presentation, an initial presentation by Mr. Hildebrand at your regular council meeting on August 26th. At that meeting, there was an overview of the utility rate setting process, as well as the legal requirements and presentation of a preliminary financial plan for both the water and the wastewater enterprises, and a proposed rate survey along with a project schedule. Some of the key discussion items by council included direction to staff, whether to defer or eliminate proposed capital improvement projects in order to either reduce or smooth some of the rate adjustments. In the presentation Mark will cover tonight does identify that some of the timing of proposed capital improvements were adjusted to address some of the immediate rate impacts, and to really identify a more appropriate timeline for implementation of multi-year capital projects rather than completing them all in 1 year. In addition, the discussion at your August 26th meeting, council discussed whether to implement a pay-as-you-go strategy versus a debt issuance strategy, and there was a general consensus by council at that time to focus on a pay-as-you-go strategy. And last but not least, there was a discussion about timing of implementation of some of the proposed rate adjustments. At that time, there was a proposal to do multiple rate adjustments in 2021, followed by an annual rate adjustment at the start of the fiscal year, with the other alternative looking at an initial rate adjustment in January of 2021, followed by an 18-month period where the rate adjustments would occur again in fiscal year 2022. Based on council's feedback, we did bring forward an additional alternative that Mark Hildebrand is going to present and provide to council. This involves an alternative where you adjust rates starting on July 1 of 2021 and annually thereafter. And staff looked at this very carefully and thought there were some potential benefits that council may want to consider to looking at this alternative, really in lieu of the previous 18-month alternative. And I think that was at the direction or at the request of Vice Mayor Turner that we look further at and provide additional data on the timing of rate adjustments. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mark Hildebrand. Mark's going to, again, just for the council's benefit, cover some of the topics that we covered previously, but then dive in a little deeper on those key discussion items that we discussed at your previous meeting. So with that said, Mark, If you want to proceed with your presentation, please do. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And can you see my screen okay?
We can see it.
Great. All right, well, thank you for having me this evening. I will be going through this presentation. A lot of it's going to be familiar to council, and so I will go through the slides at a pretty brisk pace, just because I know you're familiar with the content. But by all means, feel free to jump in and interrupt me if you have any clarification questions. As David pointed out, I'll be directing the conversation to focus more on the decision points that we have ahead of us this evening. So here's the agenda. I'm going to do a short overview of the rate setting process and some of the legal requirements that we're required to abide by. Then we'll cover the water enterprise financial plan, followed by the wastewater financial plan, talk about the proposed rates for both water and wastewater, and I'll include some surveys of some regional utilities in that discussion. And we'll cover the water shortage surcharge policy and talk about the adoption schedule. So high-level overview, when we do a rate study for public utilities, these are the three general steps that we follow. The first one is called the revenue requirements, where we're really looking at, it's a financial plan where we're looking at all the revenues coming into the utility, largely in form of rate revenue, but there's some other miscellaneous revenue. And then all the expenses, and the expenses are coming in the form of operating costs, debt service, and capital projects. Once we understand how much rate revenue is needed and we come up with a financial strategy over a 5 to 10 year period, we then look at which customers are driving the cost of the utility so that we can allocate costs to the proper customer classes based on the way that they use the water system or the wastewater system. And then finally in the rate design, we determine, once we know how much revenue we want to collect from, say, single family homes for water service, the rate design is deciding how the rates are structured and how much we collect through the fixed portion of the bill versus the volumetric portion of the bill. The legal requirements, this is really the guiding documents for how the city is required to set rates within California. It's commonly known as Proposition 218. And the basic tenet is that you can't charge more than the cost of providing service. This is has been a hot topic in the industry for about 8 or so years. There was a major court case that happened down in San Juan Capistrano, where the bar was really raised significantly for utilities to demonstrate that they were in fact not charging more the cost of providing service. And so a lot of the decisions that we make and a lot of the things that we're recommending today are very firmly within the requirements of the law. Our first priority is to make sure that the rates that we're proposing are legally defensible and they protect the city. So if we go to the water enterprise financial plan, here's a high-level structural overview of the enterprise. You see on the left side, those are the types of revenues that are collected by the enterprise. The boxes aren't to scale, but I did make them different sizes to give some sense of scale. The vast majority of your revenue comes from your water rate revenue, but you also have other miscellaneous charges, interest earnings, impact fees from developers and whatnot. Those go into two different funds. You have your operating fund and your capital funds, and they go to pay for expenses such as operating and maintenance, debt service, and capital projects. So when we start the financial plan, we first look to see how much money is in the enterprise. And at this point, you have just over $2 million in unrestricted cash and about $500,000 in restricted cash from impact fees. Impact fees are collected from developers, and that revenue can only be spent on projects related to expanding the system. Here's the revenue profile for the water enterprise. You can see that 86% of your revenue comes from rate revenue. And then there's a variety of other miscellaneous revenues. There's the transfer in comes from the general fund, which helps to pay for some of the post-employment benefits that the water enterprise pays for. On the other side of the coin, we have our operating expenses and debt service. So you can see that debt service is about 15% of your expenses, and your salaries are about 37%. And there's a variety of other expenses there. I do want to point out, I'm going to go back for a second. You see the revenue here is $3.6 million, and then this table adds up to 3.3 million. I don't want to create any confusion that revenues exceed expenses, because what's not shown on this graph is the capital expenses. So the capital expenses are a major part of the utilities expense, and so that's going to vary significantly from year to year, but it is a large number. And here it is, and you can see what we've done here is we've shown a bit of history of capital spending and then the forecast. And it's important to show the history to show where the city's coming from. And while there was one major project back in 2016, the La Vista project, generally speaking, both enterprises, water enterprise and sewer enterprise, has been underspending on repair and replacements. The city has been deferring a lot of critical maintenance on its infrastructure. And so what is part of the plan now is a more proactive approach to addressing the water enterprise or the water utilities assets, and making sure that you protect those valuable assets and that you continue to provide safe and reliable water. So there is going to be the average historical has been $1 million a year. That's entirely driven by that single project back in 2016. The forecast is going to be $2 million a year on average. And so that is going to be one of the major driving forces for the rate increases that we're proposing tonight. I won't spend any time on this table, but you do have it in your handout. So it just shows that, these forecasts are not just numbers that are thrown up on the wall. These are very specific projects with specific schedules that have been prioritized and looked at in terms of criticality and need. So there's a whole business case behind each one of these projects. And here's some of the pictures of the projects that are highlighted in that table. I personally don't know the story behind these projects, but you can see that you have some major assets out there in your community, some really large tanks and some pump stations and whatnot. And all of these are spread throughout your community, and it takes a lot of work to keep them maintained and in good shape in order to serve the community. The last thing we'll look at are the reserves, and this is basically the policies that the city chooses to use in order to give guidance on how much cash you want to keep in reserve. One of those reserve policies is your contingency reserve, which seeks to keep about 25% of your operating costs in a fund, as well as your debt service, in order to account for any unexpected changes in operating costs. And then your replacement reserve is a function of the size of your capital spending, and that's really designed to help address the natural volatility that you have in capital spending. You'll have one year that may be millions of dollars more spending than the previous year, and so this reserve helps to cushion those spikes in the capital spending. And the capital fee reserve is again from the impact fees, and this is a restricted reserve where your impact fees go. So before I show the two scenarios that we're going to discuss, these are a little bit different than what I showed last time. And so I want to talk about the rate adjustment timing really quick. These two options are a little bit different. The first option is the same, which is that we would implement the first rate increase on January 1st, so just in a few months. And the second increase would be just 6 months later. And the reason that we're trying to get back to July 1st is because that's the beginning of your fiscal year. Administratively, it makes a lot of sense for your staff and for reporting purposes and for budgeting and whatnot. It makes a lot of sense to have your rate increases occur on July 1st. So we have the opportunity to either do your first rate increase on January 1st and then do the second one on July 1st, just 6 months later. Or the second alternative is to skip January 1st and just wait until July 1st to do the first rate increase. What you'll see is that if you wait for 6 months, there's lost time. Essentially, there's 6 months of revenue that you will not be collecting from those increased rates. And so as a result, in the second alternative, while the rates won't go up as soon, they'll ultimately have to go up by a bit more over the course of 5 years in order to make up for the lost time. In order to make up for lost time. So I'll show you what that looks like. But the second alternative does have the benefit that this is a very unique time. The city and the state and the country and the world are going through very tough economic times. And so maybe it does make sense to give the economy a little bit more time to recover and give your citizens extra 6 months in order to, before you raise rates. So here is the first alternative where their first rate would happen immediately on January 1st. The rate increases are down at the bottom here. And you can see, I'm not sure if there's the, pointer. You can see these would be 13% per year. These are actually lower than what we presented a few weeks back. We were able to look at the model and make some adjustments and finish our quality control in the model. So these rates are a couple percent lower than what we presented a few weeks ago, but it'd be 13% per year for 5 years. And again, this one would be on July 1st, and this next one would be, this first one would be on January 1st, and the second one would be July 1st, just 6 months later. The cumulative rate increase over 5 years would be 184%. And yes, these are large numbers. This isn't good news, obviously. This is a difficult thing for anyone to consider. But it is really important to understand the backdrop that the city has been deferring costs for quite some time. And the city is making the right choice by choosing to address the capital spending. You can see up here in this chart, your expenses are in the foreground. You can see how low your expenses are when you don't have any capital spending. And then all of a sudden, when you add this blue to the top, that's your capital spending. You can see your expenses almost double. And this is the right amount of capital spending that the utility needs in order to protect its system. And so you are going to need significant rate increases in order to make that adjustment. This chart down here, the black line are reserve targets. And the red line represents the red line represents the actual reserves. And so you can see that the actual reserves and the reserve target meet out in 2027. And I do want to correct myself. There's a typo here. This should say 84%. So the cumulative rate increases over 5 years is 84%, not 184%. Apologies. That mistake's going to be on all the slides here. The one should not be there. So here is the alternative 2. And so this is not increasing the rates on January 1st and waiting until July 1st. And you can see that the rate increase, so you have a 0 here. So you only have 4 years of rate increases, and you can see that it's a 17% rate increase in that situation per year. And the cumulative increase over 5 years is not 187, but 87%. So it's marginally higher because of the lost time, the 6 months that you aren't raising rates. So that's the water enterprise financial forecast. Before I move over to wastewater, are there any questions?
Thank you, Mark. Council members, are there any questions on the water portion?
Nope.
Mark, can you go back, please, to the capital project chart where you listed all the capital projects? I guess the thing that kind of I'd like to know, these capital projects, some are mandated that we have to do. Is that correct? Are they mandated by the water agencies in the state that we have to do some of them?
A lot of them are. You can see over here on in the right column, which ones are you have absolutely no choice. You are mandated by regulators on how you're required to maintain your system. Others are decisions by your engineering team and are listed as necessary. You can see, for example, there's one here that's called desirable, but it's security fencing at one of your facilities. So you can see that even the projects that are simply desirable are still doing important things, such as providing security to water. And as you can imagine, securing your water and keeping it safe is also a very high priority, but it puts into perspective the importance of all the other projects.
Well, you know, when our increase in fees clearly did not or didn't account for the capital spending forecast, but I'm wondering how many necessary items added after rates have been set. I mean, it's not like they've been sitting there forever. I didn't explain that very well, but
Excuse
for
me,
example,
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't hear your statement. You kind of froze there. Could you repeat, please?
Sure. I'm trying to determine, you know, how we got such a gap between what we need and what we have to do the capital projects. And I'm just wondering, when were the capital projects added to the list? You know, when we set the rates back when, did we know all these capital projects were in the pipeline? Or were some added after the rate setting?
I believe I can add to that. Looking at the last rate study, that was produced during the middle of a drought, so the water consumption was way down. Certain assumptions were made in terms of recovery of that consumption of water. It never occurred. People kept conserving. So the amount that we would think we would have in the reserve to help pay for these capital projects never materialized. So that's why you see a gap there. Nothing was able to be done because there was no money in the reserves to get things done.
And Mayor, if I can, to add to the city engineer's comment, you're asking about, you know, where these capital and projects were previous to this financial plan update. And basically, since the previous update, staff has engaged in development of the capital improvement program, which the last time we did that was in 2011. So the previous rate study really didn't reflect the cost of carrying out these projects in the study itself. As identified in the agenda report, the annual rate adjustments of 3% were really reflective of inflationary costs of, you know, basically production of water, and therefore did not capture additional revenue to cover capital improvement costs, because at the time when the study was done, the previous study, we didn't have a comprehensive list of CIP projects that we've since identified, which are so critical to maintenance of the water and wastewater infrastructure.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mark. Mark, we're ready for sewer, I guess.
Okay.
Councilmembers, I'm sorry, were there any other questions?
Okay, great. So switching gears to the wastewater enterprise, very similar structure. The only difference in this picture here is these are sewer rate revenues and revenues that come into the structure, but very similarly organized. The beginning cash balance on the sewer side is nearly $3 million in unrestricted, and then nearly $1 million in impact fees, which again are restricted for growth-related capital projects. The revenue profile is also very similar to on the water side. It's about 86% of your revenue comes from rate revenue. And you also have a pretty significant transfer in from the general fund to help pay for some of the employment benefits. On the operating expenses, the wastewater enterprise actually does not have any existing debt. So all you have here is operating expenses in the form of salaries, benefits, supplies, etc. So one of the major stories when we talk about wastewater is a very large potential future project that's called the Advanced Water Treatment Project. And this is a project that may be forced on the city by the State Water Quality Control Board. And it would essentially upgrade your existing wastewater treatment plant to treat water at a much higher level. This is something that the city has been warned of for some time. But it's not clear if and when this project's going to be required of the city. It's still being decided at the state level, but it is a major project. It's on the order of $80 million, and it would be probably at least 10 years out. What we've done is that because the wastewater, first of all, because we don't know what the project is necessarily going to look like. We don't know if it's going to be required at all. And the fact that the water enterprise has quite a bit of catching up to do even without this project. We're choosing to ignore this project. We're not ignore it, but we're not making it part of the financial plan at this time. We're aware of it. We're keeping track of it, and we're going to react when things become more clear. But in the immediate term, we're proposing rate adjustments that are going to help pay for all the other capital spending, which I'll show. And this slide covers all that. You need really, really large rate increases in order to start to plan for this project. And because we're not even sure if it will be required, it's premature at this point to start moving on these really large rate increases. So this is what the capital spending for the wastewater enterprise looks like without that project. And you can see it's still a really large increase. Historically, you spent nearly nothing in the last 5 years on repair and replacement of your existing infrastructure. And the forecasted average is going to be $2 million. So this is just like the water enterprise, a very large jump in capital spending, and the district will have its full, or the city will have its hands full adjusting rates to be able to afford these new capital expenses. So here's a similar list as I showed for water, list of specific projects that are being that are planned for the wastewater enterprise. And here's some highlights. We went over this last time. If anybody has any specific questions, we can maybe come back to the slide, and your city engineer can talk about some of these specific projects. But there are some good details and information about the capital projects that are not needed. The enterprise has a reserve targets as well. They're similar to water. They have a contingency reserve for the operating budget, and there's also a replacement reserve for the capital budget. So here's the alternative one. Again, it's the same situation, deciding whether you want to raise rates on January 1st or on July 1st. This is the immediate increase in January 1st. Again, you need to subtract 100% from these cumulative numbers down here. So this is 119% is the cumulative rate increase over 5 years. So it'd be 17% per year for the next 5 years. The jump in capital spending, you can sort of see it visually here relative to water. The amount of capital spending is very large compared to your other costs. Your revenues currently are enough to pay for your operating costs, which are shown in dark blue here. And you can see the capital costs more than double that expense. And so that's why you are being required to double your rate revenue over the next 5 years in order to get to the point where your reserves are stable. We are building the reserves. Again, the forecasted reserve levels are the red, and the black line are your target reserves. We are increasing reserves more than you need in anticipation of 26, 27, where you have this spike in capital spending. At that point, you'll draw down on those reserves and you'll come down to your reserve targets. And from there on out, it's expected to be more stable. Alternative 2, this is if you skip January 1st and you wait until July 1st and you do 4 years of increases, that would jump to 23, 22, 22, 22, and the cumulative would be 123% over those 4 years. Same dynamic where the reserves would be built up and drawn down in 26. Any questions on the wastewater financial forecast?
You know, just kind of a observation, David, before we post these to the website, and I'm sure we will, we can just make sure we the cumulative increase, taking away that 100%, please.
Yep. Yeah, I apologize for that.
Council members, any questions on the wastewater end of this? Members of the public, Irene, I don't see any hands raised.
There's a few more slides if you want to wait till the end from the public.
Thank you.
Yes, no hands are raised at this time, Mayor.
Okay. So now I'll move on to what does this mean in terms of rates. So on the water side, I'm just going to talk about alternative 1 here for simplicity. So this would be the 15%, sorry, the 13% rate increase. That's a typo as well there. This is the 13% rate increase on January 1st. You can see that the current rates are here and at $4.75, and the proposed rates are $5.47. And you can there's some example bill impacts over here. So currently a bill for a median water user, single family, is $52.82, and the proposed bill would be $57. And sorry, my screen's cut off here. Thank you. All right, would be $59.51. So that'd be an increase of about 13%, which is the average increase that most customers are going to see. So you can see there's not a whole lot of variance in how different types of customers are going to be affected. Some are a little bit below the average, 12%, and some are a bit above, but they all are generally about 13%. Specifically, if we look at the I got the same slide. Jeez. Okay. So this is the specific rates that we'd be looking at in the alternative 2. I apologize. I'm just going to skip to this slide. This is the 17% increases for 4 years. So you can see how those rates would play out over the next 4 years. We did a survey of how the city currently compares to regional water utilities. A lot of these are very similar in nature to Cloverdale. You can see your current rates are down here at the bottom half of the average. And you can see with the proposed rates in year 1, you would still be kind of in that pack in the middle there with a bunch of other utilities. The X's here represent or show which of these utilities own and operate their own water treatment plant. So a lot of these other agencies receive treated water from Sonoma County Water Agency, which is actually a relatively cheap source of treated water. So a lot of these agencies that have that benefit are able to operate at a much lower cost because of those of that access to that cheaper water. On the wastewater side, here's alternative one, and you can see this is with the 17% rate increase. You can see the different, the current rates here and the effective rates on January 1st. And the change, again, the change depends on what type of customer you are. Some customers are going to be seeing slightly lower rate increases and others slightly higher. But on average, it'll be a 17% rate increase. After a year, after the first rate increase, everybody will go up by the same amount. These variances are just due to some small updates to the structure. And here's a rate survey showing where you are on the wastewater. So on the wastewater, you are obviously acutely aware that we're proposing significant rate increases. It's important to note how low Cloverdale's rates are currently. You're far and away the cheapest wastewater bill in the region. And even after a 17% rate increase in year one, you'll still be far and away the cheapest water or wastewater service. So this is probably a rate increase that's long overdue. You're catching up with the cost of operating a utility in this environment with these regulations and with aging infrastructure. And this shows all the rates for alternative one for 5 years and both alternatives. And then this is an interesting survey. So this is combining the two surveys that we shared, and it shows that your current combined bill is the lowest in the region, largely driven by the wastewater bill. And even after the rate increases, you're still below the average bill. You may be thinking, well, after the other rate increases, you're going to climb the ladder. But Bob Reed and I are working on this project, and we work for a lot of these clients, a lot of these utilities, and I can assure you that they're all looking at similar pressures, similar increases in the cost to do business. So a lot of these utilities will be raising their rates over the next coming years as well. One last topic is your water shortage surcharge. So this is a policy that you currently already have in place, and we're updating it. And it's the actions that the city will take in the event of a water shortage event. We've updated it to comply with state requirements that you define your water shortage contingency plans based on 6 stages, ranging from different use reduction goals of 0 to 10%, all the way up to over 50%. And so all public utilities are being asked to adopt plans that use these 6 stages. So we've updated your plan to consider that. It's a 2-pronged strategy. If this were to happen, there would be a significant reduction in capital spending during these different stages in order to account for the fact that you're going to be receiving a lot less revenue because of reduction in water sales, and you'll also have some increasing costs from your conservation program and whatnot. And we're also going to implement a surcharge, which will provide some additional revenue to make up for the lost revenue. It is important to note that this has been structured in such a way that for those customers who do reduce water by the guidelines, so for example, in this case, they're asking for reductions of 20-30%. A customer who reduces their water by that much will still see a smaller bill. A part of their bill will go up by 18%, but only the usage portion. And so that will, their bill will actually still go down despite the surcharge. And that concludes the presentation. I apologize for those typos. We will certainly get those corrected before it gets posted to the website.
Thank you, Mark. And could you just go over the slide that you just put up? No, the last one, the timetable.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we have to send the draft final report for council review on the 18th of
Correct.
right?
Yeah, so that's the end of this week. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, the end of next week.
Okay, council members, any questions for the report? And after you're done, I'm going to open it up to public comment and then we'll bring it back.
Marta here.
Yes, Marta, please.
You know, this is going to be something that the public is going to be quite upset about because they're not as informed as we are. Mark Consultant, could you advise us or share with us what other jurisdictions have done when they have to bring this forth to the public? I mean, it's clear for me, but not everybody is as engaged or as informed or as read as we in council are in regards to this issue.
Right.
My main concern is the public. How do we
Yeah.
bring this out?
No, I understand, and you're right. It's a complicated issue that is hard to explain just over a short conversation. But I think the important thing to understand is that the city has been undercharging its customers for quite some time. And the problem with undercharging is that not only are you not replacing your infrastructure and making the right investments in your system when it should happen, but it creates a backlog that requires you to dig out of that hole. So, your customers have been enjoying below average bills for the region. They've been paying a lot less than they should have for a number of years. And so at this point, the city just needs to make the right decisions in order to really protect this valuable infrastructure that everybody relies on. Your water supply and your wastewater treatment are essential services, key to human health and just the region. So any lack of investment or underinvestment in the system is really hurting everyone.
And Councilmember Cruz, if I can also add to Mark Hildebrand's response, there are a couple of things that staff would undertake if the action tonight is to council to make a recommendation on rates, would be to finalize the rate study report with the recommended rates that council ultimately supports. That rate study, along with the Prop 218 notice, would be placed on our website. The Prop 218 notice is legally required to be sent to every customer of the water system. So they would be provided with a fairly detailed public notice. It's more than your standard notice that we often provide, which includes a lot of detail about the proposed rate adjustment, and also includes a link to the rate study on the website. So there'd be kind of two mechanisms. One, again, through the website, through the Prop 218 notice. And we could, of course, have a copy of the study available by hard copy in any locations that council so directs, including obviously, the library and city hall at this time, because critical public facilities are closed. That makes it a little more challenging, but we could, send hard copies of the report out. And so that's the traditional method in which the outreach is conducted is through the Prop 218 notice and through information on our website. But any other additional outreach would be, as directed by council, in terms of getting information out on this study. Of course, we could point back to this meeting, which is recorded for anybody who wants to, have the detailed overview of the presentation.
Thank you, David. And I think those graphs are very important to show the public how low our rates are in comparison to our region. I think that is definitely something that will make people think and understand and value this report. Thank you.
Absolutely. And staff can, we can include this information in the actual 218 notice, if council would like to see that in the 218 notice be included, so that there is a reference point for rates. And that was done last time, and we're certainly happy to do that again. And of course, put this on our website.
And just to kind of piggyback on what Councilmember Cruz said, another important, I think, document, David, that needs to be shared is the on slide 11, which is the capital spending forecast.
The capital improvement program.
Pretty significant. Yeah, those are some pretty significant dollar amounts tied to those projects. And a lot of them are necessary or mandatory. It's not like we're just decided to do this. It's got to be done. So, council members, other questions, please, before we bring it back?
I have one question. In regards to the alternate options 1 and 2, can we mix and match where we might delay the water bill increase and just do it annually, but allow the wastewater increase to happen at alternative 1, where it's kind of a January, July, and then rolling on through at July from that point on?
Yes, that's possible.
Thank you.
That's a good thought, Jason.
Can I make a comment on those thoughts? I really think that I'm also very sensitive to the fact that people are kind of broke right now, but we can't keep putting this off over and over. Our water rates are the lowest around, and infrastructure and keeping it running. I mean, we have to supply people with water, sewer, roads, police, some of our basic stuff. And we cannot keep sort of pushing these things. Ouch. Sorry, cat. We can't keep pushing it down the road. So I think the people will understand it. And I think Marta's right in one respect, in that one slide, when people, and we're gonna take hits for this. People are gonna yell and they're gonna scream. But if you show them that slide right there, we're still gonna be one of the lowest around. So I think people will get that.
If I can, just one more, and it's not intended to argue, but just to clarify, if we were to delay until July on the water rates, with the percentage being higher, is the overall revenue gain over the course of the time period needed the same, more or less?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it visually. We're talking water?
Yeah.
So you can see it visually when you compare this graph. If you look at 2026, for example, you can see that the red line and the black line are almost in the same spot. If we go to alternative 1, you can see that the red line is slightly above. So that will be the difference in the amount of revenue. Alternative 1 will get you a little bit more revenue by 2026.
Okay.
But it's not, in the scheme of things, it looks like it's about $500,000 or so, and not significant.
My only thing with that, Marianne, is if we do see more and more things open up moving into the spring of 2021, and we do see some more secure income for our community members, it might buy us the right amount of time. But here I am, first term, and you're having to deal with some of the ramifications of this being delayed to this point. So I don't want to discredit your point of view. I just wanted to give you an idea of where my train of thought was going.
No, I get it. I'm just really a big proponent of we've got to keep our infrastructure up and running properly. And we have been, just because our economic situation in this town is very difficult for all of us and for many of the people who live here. But water supply and a way to treat your sewage is pretty basic stuff. And so I think we just got to bite the bullet and go for it. I know that's easy for me to say, but I don't know.
Marta, just join into the conversation. I'm not going to call on everyone. Just say what you have to say.
Okay. Yes. The situation for most people in Cloverdale is not going to improve by January. It's not going to improve by June. There's going to be a lot of accumulated debt, a lot of people who are unemployed, many people who have had less hours. I see this firsthand every day in my conversations and updates with the agricultural farm working community that we have here, and some of the first line workers, regardless of race or gender. So we're just going to have to address it. Hopefully, we'll be able to have some sort of funding to assist some people who are in dire need. And perhaps we could even appeal to some of the foundations in the region to assist some of the citizens that cannot pay all of their bills at this point. But we definitely need to move on with this, because we could have an earthquake. And then what are we going to do? I mean, we are not ready to deal with infrastructure problems during an earthquake or anything as such. So thank you.
I have to agree with Marta on the fact that I talked to a lot of the farm workers are taking a big hit now because a lot of them can't work. Some of them can, but a lot of them aren't, especially where the grapes have been eliminated. They just aren't going to. I heard a figure that 50% are going to be too smoke damaged to use. I don't know if that's true or not. But that means a lot of these guys are not going to have work until pruning. And once the pruning starts, then things will be a little better for them again. But Marty, you're right. There will be accumulated debt that they're going to have to pay. So I don't disagree with holding it off a little bit. I understand what Jason's saying, but that's kind of what got us into this in the first place. So I don't know. I'll go along with it. I really want the increases to start not before January, I agree, but we just have to bite the bullet and go for this.
Thank you. Melanie, anything to add?
No, not a lot, but I think that our economic outlook is actually probably looking worse. The worst is going to hit us much later. And I think that we've just deferred maintenance on these vital systems for far too long, and it's going to cost us more in the long run. As much as I hate to do it, I think we have to take action. And because we've deferred this and we need to get moving on it, or it's just going to cost us more as we go on. So, but I'm certainly, I'm cognizant of, and this is a very difficult decision, and I understand the points of view of all of the council members, but I'd have to say that we've kind of made enough excuses. We've deferred maintenance long enough, and we need to make sure that our vital systems are operating, and we're delivering a good product, and we're preparing for the future. That's where I'm at, Gus.
Thank you. Irene, is there anybody with their hand raised? I looked, I didn't see anyone.
No, Mayor, no hands are raised.
Okay, so would somebody like to make a recommendation to staff on how we would like to proceed?
And Mayor, if I can just, really what staff has presented is two alternatives. It's an immediate rate timing increase, which would increase rates starting January 1st and again on July 1st of 2021. Under that scenario, rates would be slightly higher initially, but in year 4 be slightly lower. Under the delayed rate timing scenario, there would be no rate increase on January 1st. It would be delayed until July 1st. So we do all the work to implement it then. And under that alternative, annual rates are lower the first 3 years, but then they're higher in the 4th year. Relatively revenue neutral, though the rate increase the immediate rate increase brings in revenue sooner to help start building up the fund balance a little bit sooner. So that's the primary advantage is that you have cash on hand, more immediately in case of, as I think Councilmember Cruz alluded to, an emergency. So you have a little more cash up front. So those are the two alternatives that staff has presented, and that's what we're hoping for direction on tonight from council.
Okay. Well, I pretty much have to agree with all of my fellow council members. This is something we hate to do, unfortunately. And, the capital improvement projects are just so expensive. Lord knows what other ones will be coming down mandated by the state. But I think we need to start implementing the increase on January the 1st. So that's what I'd like to throw out there. Is there a second, or is there support for that?
I'd support that, Mr. Mayor, that we need to go with alternative 1 on both water and wastewater.
Yeah.
I'll support that.
Me too, Mayor.
Councilmember Turner?
No, but that's okay. 4-1 is democracy at work.
Okay. Well,
But
David,
very good points, Mr. Vice Mayor.
yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
David, do you have enough direction? You're muted.
The staff has direction to implement the immediate rate timing alternative. We'll proceed with preparing the Prop 218 notice, finalizing the rate study report, much of which is what you've seen in this presentation tonight, but with the actual rate structure as it was presented or as recommended by council. And we'll get that to council so you can take a look at that before we release it and provide it to the public. And we'll again be back at the November meeting for first November meeting for a public hearing on the proposed rate adjustment.
Okay. Thank you, staff. Mark Hildenberg, thank you for the presentation. Mr. Bacone, is there anything you'd like to add before we close out on this?
No, nothing really. I mean, just remember too that the capital costs are just a order of magnitude cost estimate, but we'll work with the budget, bottom line.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, do we need a break? Is everyone okay? Okay, then let's just plow along. And again, thank you for the presentation, staff. I know you put a lot of time and work into it, and we'll get through this too. Okay, next is the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar will be considered together by one action of the council, unless any council member or member of the public request an item be removed and considered separately.
I'll move the item, Mr. Mayor.
One more time?
I'll move the item.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cruz,
Aye.
Councilmember Bagby,
Aye.
Councilmember Brigham,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Turner,
Aye.
and Mayor Walter.
Aye.
Thank you.
Communications, do we have any communications to share?
No communications, Mayor, council members.
Thank you. No public hearing items, new business. The 2020 League of California Cities Conference resolution, and I guess we need to do some discussing on how our delegate, Melanie, is going to vote. We'll be giving her some direction. So David, is this, no, actually this is Irene's, is it not?
Yes. So thank you. And good evening, Mayor and Council members. Yes, again, this item is just a follow-up to the Council's last meeting held on August 26th, where Councilmember Bagby was selected as the voting delegate and Mayor Walter as the alternate to the League of California Cities annual conference being held in October via web conference. Part of the business meeting is to consider and vote on the proposed resolutions. Only one resolution was submitted to the League this year, and that is calling for an amendment to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996 to require social media companies to remove materials which promote criminal activities. The proposed resolution packet was included in your agenda packet as attachment 1. And really the purpose of discussion is to provide, again, your voting delegates with direction to support or in opposition of the proposed amendment that will be heard at the League's meeting on October 9th.
Thank you, Irene. Council members, who would like to start some discussion?
Anybody?
No, not really.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, and I'm inclined to support this. I mean, I think that anytime we're looking to amend a communications policy from 1996 and it's in regards to the internet or computers, probably need to read that and consider it. And I think that in light of recent events and how, I mean, social media it's bad enough. And in recent events, it was definitely used to promote and elicit criminal activity. I think that, personally, I think the federal government has been completely asleep at the switch where the internet and social media is concerned. And we definitely, it's been the Wild West for long enough. And I think that there just need to be some consequences. So I'm inclined to support this. This came before us in the Governance, Transparency, and Labor Relations Policy Group, and it was pretty well supported. And you can see by the letters from cities from all up and down California that they definitely support this too. So I'd like to take a yes vote with me to the conference if the council can support that.
Council members, what are your thoughts? Can we support this?
Of course. And I also would like, Mr. Mayor, if it's appropriate at this point, to I'm hoping that all of us will participate at the conference this year, since it's much cheaper and it's online.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay, if there's nobody,
well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say my battery is down to 7%. So
yeah, mine's.
We need to
I just want to say, yeah, sure. I have my doubts whether or not this whole thing can be reined in, but on the other hand, it's worth giving it. Give it hell, Melanie. Just go ahead and see if we can do something. But I'm being cynical, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, you've got your directions, Melanie. Let's move on to subcommittee reports.
So Finance, Admin, and Police, our next meeting is the 6th. Our next meeting is October 6th, and last meeting we heard a presentation on fiscal model and budget adjustment strategies and utility user tax measure education. Is there anything that other council members have a question about or want an additional review? And if not, you will be hearing from us on utility user tax measure education and strategies in the near future. Is that right, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
All right. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, I've got juice. Thank you. Planning, sustainability. Our next meeting is October the 20th. Public Works. Anything from Public Works?
We will be meeting September 22nd. Nothing at this moment. We'll probably be discussing some complaints of some of the people about the buses in town. But other than that, everything else is going okay.
Okay. Next is the Joint City Fire District.
Yeah, our next meeting is scheduled for October the 12th at 5:30 p.m.
And how about the City School Board?
That's me. We're meeting on the 21st. At this point, I'm in conversations with, what's his name? Luis, who is in charge of IT for the school system. And we're trying to, well, he already developed a map of where we're having problems for some students in the district area. I understand that there was also a meeting to discuss some more access points in town. We will be working on this. In the next meeting, we're probably going to be discussing distribution of food also, because I believe that some of the lunches are not being picked up. And we'll meet on the 21st. So I look forward to having some of you join in.
Thank you. And the homeless, I'm sorry, was there something else? Okay. The Homeless Community Advisory Group will be meeting shortly. Council reports, any additional council reports?
You know, Mr. Mayor, I submitted mine in writing, but I just kind of wanted to make sure that I brought to your attention that there was an emergency meeting of Sonoma County Transportation Authority regarding some of the rebuttal language that was submitted. We did take legal action and came to an agreement for a revision by the party who submitted the rebuttal on some of the incorrect information. So I believe it's been put to bed, and I understand that the county clerk has been able to go to print once that last detail was checked. So again, on the SETA, it's going to be double D, which is fortunate and unfortunate. On your ballots, it will be very important to get information, especially out to folks here in Cloverdale, about the fact that that is our sole source of roads revenue that we can use to leverage other grants and other sources of revenue for roads projects. So you'll see that coming up as well. And if we could, have some participation letters to the editor, push information out to all of our constituents regarding that item and how important it is to our budget and our road maintenance program, that would be very helpful. So that concludes that report. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next is informational reports, update on drought conditions. Mr. Rincon?
Yeah, okay. So quickly, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the things that are happening. Lake Mendocino is the point. The storage in Lake Mendocino dictates how much water is coming down the river at Russian River right now. And Sonoma Water has submitted this report. It's a weekly update. They've been giving them to me. But bottom line, you can see the graphs have shown that they're keeping the lake just above target, which is good. And the flows that we're seeing in the Russian River, you can go to the next page on that one. Yes, right there. So the flows here in Cloverdale, you can see they're well above what we would consider our stage of where we need to react, take some action. Right now they're running around 120 CFS. And remember, our target where we start to consider some action would be 60 CFS, about half of that amount. So we're doing pretty good right now. There's no need for any conservation other than our parks are, using less water just to get through the year. And remember, this is through December that we need to get through the year. So hopefully we get some early rains and we can just all forget about this. But for now, it's looking pretty good. Sonoma Water is doing a great job managing the water resource, and Cloverdale seeing sufficient water here where we divert. And you can go to the next slide. I believe or is that it, Irene? I'm not sure.
Yes, it was just the two.
Okay, fine. So that's basically my report. We're doing well. We're keeping an eye on things. We're looking at this report obviously weekly. And so nothing further to report. If there's any questions, I'll take them now.
Well, I'm in the process of, once again, weaning myself off of Facebook. I started getting back on it here about a month ago. And I just can't stand it. So I'm weaning myself off it. But one of the things I did see, Mark, is a water leak that we had over at Solar Park that apparently was going on for quite a while. Has that ever been resolved? Do you know?
Yes, I just want to remind everyone that that is not the city's facility, that it's a private water main, and a contractor working for Solar Park went in and pulled permits for mark and locate rather. And they went, and supposedly they were there on this week, Tuesday and Wednesday. So I believe they've repaired it already. I've not been out there to look, but again, this is private property and we've contacted them several times. Now I have the maintenance manager's cell phone number. So hopefully we'll get a quicker response next time.
Okay, but when you say it's a private pipeline, it's still the city water that they're wasting down the drain.
Indeed.
Regardless of, yeah.
Yes.
And they are paying for it, hopefully. So
no, they are not, because that's the way the Solar Park was developed. It was allowed to put the meters in the back and run a private lateral from our water main.
Is that fixable?
Yeah, we can do a master meter, but it changes we have to do some ordinance changes as well. I'll have to work with Jose on that. But there's other cities that when these situations arise, you put a master meter and you require that we read the master meter. We bill the HOA on a water use based off the master meter. They could sub-meter if they want to spread the cost appropriately, or they could just split it up evenly. So that's their decision, but most cities don't allow this kind of setup.
Yeah. Well, what annoyed me more than anything is, I guess, the Commonwealth Property Management, not jumping on this a little quicker. So
well, I would support us moving forward with Engineer Rincon's recommendation. If we could work with Jose on a plan for that, I think that's necessary going forward.
Okay. Yeah, let's just make sure David's comfortable with it. And I lost his picture here, but there he is. So, somebody could get back to us later on that, but let's look into it and see how difficult it would be to do that. So, legislative reports.
Mr. Mayor, before we moved away from water,
yeah,
we also have a private citizen who continues to have problems and has gone all the way to the supervisor's office. And it is a problem that this individual has. We are going to have to talk about this probably in the next subcommittee meeting, because again, some people, when they connect to the city main, they want to make the city responsible for their lack of maintenance. And this has to stop with this particular individual.
Okay. I know Jose won't let us share any more information than that probably. So, okay. Thank you, Councilmember Cruz. Maybe you can give me a phone call and bring me up to speed on that at some point. City manager, city attorney reports?
No reports, Mayor.
None tonight, Mayor. I am just on the legislative report. I am getting a briefing on all the new legislation this Friday. Hopefully I will have an email prepared for the council that I could share, and I could share more information at the next meeting as well.
Thank you. Status update on current emergency. David, is that you?
Mayor, council members, just a brief update on COVID-19. Wanted to share with council that Sonoma County, which tracks and reports COVID-19 cases, has begun tracking those cases by zip code. They've been doing that now for, I think, about a month. And that data is available on the county's website, socoemergency.org. There's been a number of inquiries about cases in the city of Cloverdale. And of course, the data that they track is by zip code. But based on the current data provided by the county, the city of Cloverdale does have what I would call is the highest active case rate in Sonoma County. This was as of Sunday, our case rate was about 1,321.9 per 100,000. And then we had 146 active cases. Now, a significant number of those, that reflects the entire geography for the Cloverdale zip code 95425. Obviously, the zip code area is much larger than the city proper. So that case data does include cases outside the city of Cloverdale. But I just wanted to share with you that as it was provided for by the county, the zip code for Cloverdale was reflected the highest case rate in all of Sonoma County. Dr. Mays, our health officer, has released a presentation late last week highlighting some of the underlying reasons why not only Cloverdale, but really Sonoma County as a whole is experiencing, relatively high rates, particularly compared to our neighboring counties such as Mendocino County, Napa County, and Marin County. And it outlines that Sonoma County really is home to a large number of essential workers, unlike Napa County and Marin County, where a lot of the workers there tend to live in Sonoma County, and therefore, if they do test positive, they're attributed to Sonoma County. And I think the other factor is that Sonoma County has a very aggressive testing strategy, and I think that also helps to capture additional cases that maybe some other counties aren't maybe tracking or picking up at the same level that we are in Sonoma County. So it kind of begs the question, what can Sonoma County do to help address this issue, slow the spread? I think it's key to continue focused approach on testing and contact tracing, and using data-driven analysis to really target where cases are occurring. Continue to reinforce the importance of wearing facial covering, continue social distancing, proper hygiene practices, and wearing masks, particularly when folks, again, being an essential workforce community, when ride sharing and or working together. I think it's also very important to continue to encourage workers to stay home when they're ill, and urge employers to provide sick leave, when and all possible. I think, some of our big employers, particularly the wine industry, can certainly help in that regard. And also continue to do outreach, particularly to the agricultural industry, make sure our skilled nursing facilities and other congregate and vulnerable settings are strengthening their prevention and their mitigation measures. I think those are all things that we're working at the local level to try to support. Obviously, it needs a regional and state approach, and we're capping what resources are available to do that. But it's key that Sonoma County and particularly Cloverdale also do their best to try to be part of the solution. That's really the end of my report on COVID. It's unfortunate data, obviously, But there is a glimmer of hope there that, you know, maybe we're doing a better job at capturing some of the positive cases, and also a call to action to our civic groups, our nonprofits, our business community to continue to be vigilant and implement appropriate, you know, practices to try to address transmission.
Thank you, David. Council members, any comments or questions? Councilmember Cruz?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I would like to take this moment to say thank you to David and to Daniel Humney and his sister for the great meetings of Resilient Cloverdale. We're now meeting twice a week on updates, and we're definitely working on making our community a safe one. We definitely have had a lot of collaboration from many partners in the county, in the region, and locally. Definitely want to say thank you to David, because this is something that is essential for us to continue to be safe and secure. We have some very good plans, and I definitely want to also recognize Christy, who has and Melanie Hall, who have taken the lead on issues regarding the elderly and how to best help the elderly in times of emergency. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and I would welcome some of you, if you have a chance, some of council members to please join in the meetings, even if it's just to listen twice a week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget Katie Young at the Citrus Fair.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
I would say that she's probably been instrumental on hardening that infrastructure in a way that is really necessary. And I've attended almost every meeting, but I think that what's happening is that it's through these almost daily meetings up until about a couple weeks ago, we've actually got about an organized situation that's going to actually work, where there were all these areas and people working in all their little scattered ways. We now have an actual group with set agendas and set responsibilities. And I got to say, you know, I'm really impressed with everybody who's doing it. Katie's done a great job, and it looks like it's actually going to work to get everything over there with generators, something I've been hoping for a very long time. So I'm pleased also.
Good.
Yes, and especially with our big advocate from Latinos Unidos, Ezequiel Guzman, who's been contacting with us and being at the meetings, and we call each other every day to update on COVID, food security, housing, rental assistance, on DocuFund, you name it. And we have a very good map at this point of some of our areas and some of the needs that we are addressing, not only when the problems are here, but ongoing. So thank you all for the support.
Well, thank you for the wonderful job you and David does. And, you know, I go to listen. I don't contribute a lot, but, you know, my big concern continues to be around our nursing homes that we have here in their evacuation strategy. I'm just afraid that the Cloverdale healthcare that's on top of the hill, the old Manzanita, if they had to evacuate, a lot of those patients are not ambulatory. You know, they have to have some type of an ambulance or a stretcher. And I'm not quite sure how they would be evacuated. I know they're supposed to submit a plan to, I think, Chief Ferguson, to you, on how they're going to evacuate their facilities. And I'm just not sure we have that yet.
They're working on that. And maybe, Chief, you could also contribute on what the initiatives that you're taking with some of the different locations here in town.
Yes, I'd be happy to, Mayor and council members. Just like you're talking about, Mr. Mayor, I've been working a lot with Christy is really taking a lead on this. She's done a fantastic job. She has actually created a spreadsheet that outlines the locations, the addresses, the responsible parties, secondary responsible parties. And we have a plan to walk the facilities and take a look at a generalized evacuation plan for those that don't have those, and really try to address working with us and coming up with a plan, which should include the fire department as well as us, and incorporate our evacuation plans for those facilities. I can tell you it is a work in progress, and we are putting the wheels in motion for each of those locations so that we do have some answers when that time comes. So rest assured it is in the process, and we are working very hard on it. And Christy deserves a lot of credit in that regard.
Good, thank you. Council members, anything else on this topic before we adjourn?
Yeah, I just would like to say that, you know, David has really taken this on and taken this to heart, and it's shown a lot of leadership. I really appreciate. And you know, this is something that we talked about even before COVID, is that, you know, we have all of these nonprofit groups doing their thing and doing them well. But then, you know, when we had a disaster like the PSPS and, you know, last fall, it just became, you know, really clear that there was a lot of silos and a lot of misinformation. And I think that the one thing that the city has been able to contribute is just the facilitation. And I think that if David and city staff are the unsung heroes of getting this plan together, that's perfectly fine with me as long as it gets done. But I think we know in this group that without that leadership role and, you know, having people under an umbrella and providing the place to facilitate all the players, this just wouldn't happen. So I just want to, you know, thank David and all the city staff, you know, the chief, Kevin, everybody who is helping facilitate this, because I don't think it would get done without that piece. So looking forward to continuing and calling in and listening and learning and contributing when I can.
You're absolutely right, Melanie. Thank you. Council members, future agenda items? Anything? Okay, well, with that being said, I'm going to thank staff as always for the hard work that you do. Irene, you did a fantastic job making me look good this evening. And there was no back echo or whatever. I had plenty of light to read, so everything was good. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.